Hello folks and welcome to this video on Macbeth. This is the second video on Act 1 Scene 7, so make sure you've checked out the other videos in the playlist before you watch this one. So in this particular video we're going to be talking a lot about deception and the difference between the appearance of loyalty and the reality of corruption. So to understand all of this we need to check your knowledge is secure first before we move on. At this point in the play, everything's building up quite quickly, and so if your knowledge of the earlier sections of the play is a little bit shaky, you're going to start to find this quite tricky. Which is why it's really important that when I give you instructions to stop the video and do a particular task, that you do that, because these activities are designed to get that information into your long-term memory. Okay, so the first activity in today's video is to check your understanding of these quotations. They're on the screen there. Pause the video, read them through, jot down what you think these quotations mean, and then start the video again when you're ready. Okay, so the first one is from Act 1, Scene 5. It's from Lady Macbeth's soliloquy, in which she's worried about Macbeth's kindness and his compassion, and she thinks that this generosity of spirit means that Macbeth won't be able to go through with the act of regicide and actually murder his cousin and his king. And so what she wants to do to make sure that her plan comes to fruition is to pour my spirits in thine ear. She wants to speak to Macbeth directly and put her thoughts directly into his head through his ear, because he'll be listening to her. The second quotation then comes from that same scene, where Lady Macbeth tells Macbeth to have a facade, to appear to be loyal and good and honest, but actually to be corrupt and malevolent and evil underneath it. And we've seen that idea quite a few times throughout the play. It happens in the very first scene when the witches say fair is foul and foul is fair, as in what appears to be fair, to be good, is actually corrupt and evil underneath. In Act 1, Scene 2, Duncan mentions the theme of appearance and reality. He says there's no art to find the mind's construction in the face, as in it's really difficult to look at someone's face and to know what they are thinking. So we see this idea of the facade or deception or appearance and reality all the way through the play, and it's going to come up again in today's scene. The next bit of the knowledge check then. So think about Act 1, Scene 7 so far. And if you haven't watched the previous video, go back and watch that and answer these questions, and then start the video again when you're ready. So the first thing, there's lots and lots and lots of reasons why Macbeth says he shouldn't kill King Duncan. One main reason is the consequences that Macbeth is going to face. He's worried about eternal damnation, about going to hell. He's worried about the consequences on earth, that he will be psychologically tormented by killing his cousin and his king by committing regicide. He says that he's Duncan's kinsman, so he's his cousin, shouldn't kill your own family members. He also talks about how he's Duncan's subject, so he should be loyal and patriotic towards him. He's Duncan's host, so he should be welcoming him and look after him, not killing him. And he also talks about what a great king Duncan is. He says his virtues will plead like angels. Like, Duncan is such a good man, such a good king, he doesn't deserve to be killed. He also talks about his vaulting ambition, which overleaps itself and falls upon the other. So Macbeth is worried that whilst he's jumping up, he's vaulting to get the crown, he might overleap, he might jump too far and end up falling down. And the second question then, Lady Macbeth is absolutely furious when her husband says this, and she decides to continue to manipulate him in order to go through with the regicide, and she does that by emasculating Macbeth. Question 3, how does she do that? Well, she accuses him of being afraid and of not being a real man. And for someone like Macbeth, who takes pride in being a soldier, in leading the army, in having a very kind of hyper-masculine military identity, the idea of someone accusing him of not being sufficiently masculine really cuts to his heart and motivates him to try and prove himself to his wife. Okay, we're going to read the next bit of the scene, and as we do that, I want you to write down some notes. So draw this table. First column, what do we learn about Macbeth? And the second column, what do we learn about Lady Macbeth? And as you're watching the video, pause every so often and jot down what you learn about each of these characters. Okay, so second half of the scene, Lady Macbeth has said, are you afraid? Are you a real man, essentially? Why won't you kill Duncan? And Macbeth says, I dare do all that may become a man. And he says, prithee, peace, as in stop talking, stop going on about this. I've made up my mind, we're not going to kill King Duncan. And Lady Macbeth cannot bear this, and she goes in for the kill, metaphorically. And she says, what beast was it then that made you break this enterprise to me? When you durst do it, then you were a man. So essentially here she's saying, why did you tell me about this enterprise, about this plan to kill King Duncan, if you're not going to go through with it? And then she says, when you durst do it, then you were a man. When you dared to do this, when you dared to kill Duncan, then you were a real man. The implication being that now that you're pulling out of the plan, you're not masculine enough for me. And she continues and says, and to be more than what you were, you would be so much more the man. As in, if you go through with this act of regicide, you're even more manly and masculine than you were before. She says, nor time nor place did then adhere, and yet you would make both. They have made themselves, and that their fitness now does unmake you. I have given suck, and know how tender 'tis to love the babe that milks me. I would, while it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and dashed the brains out, had I so sworn as you have done to this. Now, this section in yellow is quite complicated, and people often get this a little bit confused, so we're going to break it down. She starts by saying, I have given suck, as in she's breastfed a child. Now, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth don't seem to have any children together. Later in the play, Macbeth talks about his fruitless crown because he's got no children, no heirs to carry that crown on in his family name. Towards the end of the play, Macduff also refers to the fact that Macbeth has no children. However, we know from historical records that Lady Macbeth was married previously and that she had a son with her first husband. So she does know what it's like to breastfeed a child. So when she says, I know how tender 'tis to love the babe that milks me, she does know love for a child. And then she goes on and she says this absolutely horrific image. I would, while it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and dashed the brains out. So she's saying she knows what it's like to love a child, and she would have taken this child from her breast and she would have bashed its head in. If had I so sworn as you have to done this. Now, she's not saying that she has killed a child. She's not saying that she actually would, but she's saying if she promised to do something so utterly horrific as killing her own child, if she'd promised to do that, then she would go ahead because she is true to her word. The implication here is that she's saying to Macbeth, and you have lied to me. You are not true to your word, and I would be true to mine. So she's kind of prompting him to go through with the murder by this quite twisted, manipulative tactic. Now, Macbeth starts to come round to what she's saying here, but he's still quite anxious. And he says, if we should fail, and she says, we fail, but screw your courage to the sticking place and we'll not fail. So imagine you've got a wind-up toy. You often get them at Christmas, in Christmas crackers and that kind of thing. The kind of toy that you wind and wind and wind and wind, and then you put it down and it starts to run off on its own because it's got some kind of wind-up mechanism in it. So that's the kind of mechanism that Lady Macbeth is talking about here, except at this point in history, it's probably not a wind-up toy that she's talking about. It's more like a crossbow that you would wind up so that you would have the bolt, the weapon ready, and then you would use all of that pent-up energy in the spring, and you would shoot the bolt in order to kill your enemy. So she's talking about winding something up until it is ready to kill. So she says, screw your courage to the sticking place, wind yourself up until you're ready to do this, and we'll not fail. Notice that she's saying we. She's talking about them being in this together, and she's trying to give Macbeth confidence. She's emasculated him, she's manipulated him, and now she's trying to give him his confidence back. And then she continues by talking about the rest of the plan. And she says, when Duncan is asleep, whereto the rather shall his day's hard journey soundly invite him, his two chamberlains, his servants, will I with wine and wassail so convince that memory, the water of the brain, shall be a fume, and the receipt of reason a limbeck only, when in swinish sleep their drenched natures lie as in a death. What cannot you and I perform upon the unguarded Duncan? What not put upon his spongy officers, who shall bear the guilt of our great quell? So what she means is she's going to give his servants, his guards, so much wine that they go to sleep and they can't remember what's happened. And Macbeth is really impressed by this. He says, "Bring forth men, children only, for thy undaunted mettle should compose nothing but males." He says to her, "You're so masculine, you're so powerful, you've got such good ideas for this plan." And he adds to it as well. He says, "We have marked with blood those sleepy two of his own chamber." So they're going to put the blood of Duncan all over his guards and his servants to put the blame on them. He says, "We're going to use their very daggers so that people think that they have done it." And Lady Macbeth says, "Who dares receive it other? As we shall make our griefs and clamour roar upon his death." And now Macbeth, having been so utterly determined that they are going to proceed no further in this business, now says, "I am settled." He has decided he's going to go through with the murder. "I am settled, and bend up each corporal agent to this terrible feat. Away and mock the time with fairest show. False face must hide what the false heart doth know." So these final lines are a rhyming couplet. He talks about the fairest show. Think fair is foul and foul is fair. Things that appear to be fair are actually corrupt and evil underneath. And then he talks about putting on a facade. False face must hide. So the face, the front, the facade that they're going to put on is going to hide the corruption and the malevolence underneath. Okay, so hopefully you filled in your tables. What do we learn about Macbeth? What do we learn about Lady Macbeth? Pause the video, read through my notes, add to your table if you need to. And in the next video, excitingly, we're going to be able to move on to Act 2. So I will see you then.